Okay, well, just been talking, especially Pete, been talking about what Claudia would call Apollo-level automation. So I love that maturity model, by the way. And yesterday we also heard a bit about Gemini-level automation, service automation. Scott was talking about that. Wim was talking about it. I'm gonna pull us down back to Mercury-level automation. Because that was what I had at the moment, at the time. So what I'm currently doing, I am a consultant, doing a lot of network architecture, I know a bit about automation, but that's 2024. And I'd like to move the story a bit back to about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was called in for a customer to do an assignment there. It was a big customer, a big company, worldwide American company. And they were making their money by buying and selling companies. So they had a central network with central services and then a whole bunch of subsidiaries, each with their own network. And we were running a wide area network where we were running their traffic over. And my job was, well, they were splitting out a bunch of those companies into a new company. So I got the job to copy the existing network, make a copy in the cloud to run the new network over. Why in the cloud? When you're buying and selling companies, it is very bad form to invest a lot in hardware. It might not last 5 years, it might not last 3 years. So cloud is a perfect model for that. So the first thing I was asked to do, well, can you do it with infrastructure as code? Well, probably, I don't know, maybe. Well, we need to have, we had 4 hubs in the old network. We needed to have 4 or 5 hubs in the new network, and they need to be identical, preferably version controlled, so we could deploy a new version in India, and then if that worked, deploy everything to the other hubs. And if it's possible, do everything AWS native, because the AWS bill goes to some other department. So anything we spend on AWS is invisible to us, that's good. No purchasing orders, no investment discussions, very nice. So I was looking into CloudFormation, which is a tool to do this. Each AWS supported. It's very easy to get started. You just open the browser, start dragging some stuff or coding some stuff, deploy it, nice. But unfortunately, it gets messy really fast. Now, if you think back to Wednesday, Shannon was showing the ugly code with all the ifs. This gets to look a lot like that. So I moved to Terraform, which is much more clunkier. It needs to run somewhere, which is bad because you need a management infrastructure. And it has state. If you're doing anything with Terraform, you know it has state. And that's horrible. But on the other hand, it's easy to do some versioning with Git. You can call different versions of the same template from one Terraform run. And it has a lot more support for logic. So the code is a lot cleaner. So that was what I was doing. I was trying some stuff with Terraform and AWS and deploying images and having a good time. And then 2020 came along. So February of 2020, I was called into the boss's office. He asked me to close the door behind me, sat me down and said, well, we're hearing this thing about a virus that's coming from China. There's a pandemic coming, and we are worried. What if we need to all get to work from home? What if we need to close all our offices? Can we do that? Can we scale up our VPN? So I looked into it. We are currently doing 100 users, 150 users a day. Could we scale it up to 10,000, 20,000? Probably not replacing any hardware, because at short notice, that's not possible. we'd rather not change anything for the end users at this stage. Can we just, with what we have, can we scale it up 100-fold in 2 weeks? So the answer was no, we cannot do that. There's no way we can do that. On comes RFC 1925. Who hasn't heard of RFC 1925? Yeah. Okay, for the people at home. I know reading RFCs is not a favorite hobby of probably everybody. This one is very readable and it's very, very, very useful. It's 30 years old, nearly. It's 12 fundamental truths of networking. We heard a discussion around Rule 10 and Rule 11 by, but the rule I'm concerned with is rule number 1, and we all know that as network engineers, rule number 1 is it has to work. Regardless of what we're doing, the network has to run. We have to supply a VPN for 10 to 20,000 users. Go figure something out. And this is also the good thing about having a talk on Friday is that every point I'm trying to make has already been made by someone. So that's why I've got my notes, just to show that I've been paying attention. Yesterday, Johan was talking about finding where you can make the most impact. This is where you can make impact. I need to do something. I've got 2 weeks. Can I make impact with automation? Sure. Let's go. And also, the good thing is, when you get an assignment like this, a challenge like this, nobody's going to second guess you. You don't need to convince anyone that you want to do stuff with automation. You don't need to get approval for pretty much anything. If you can deliver, go, go, go. So that was our challenge. Can we do something fast without changing the end user experience? Because it was really hard to do at short notice. So no, don't buy anything off the shelf that's completely different from what we have. And preferably no non-strategic capex, because the company really doesn't like it. And also, this COVID thing is probably going away in a couple of months. So can you build something temporary, which we can delete in about 3-4 months when this pandemic's over and nobody's talking anymore about working from home? It was 2020, early 2020. We were naive. This slide is messed up, but the conclusion was we're going to build this in AWS. We were looking at AWS anyway. It fits the bill. We can deploy similar to what we have in AWS, and when the pandemic's over, we'll throw it away. So we've all seen design processes like this. Ain't no time for that. We've got a business case. Let's do a pilot and then see if it works, and then go to a loop, refine it, run it again until it's ready for production. Terraform really helps there, by the way, and I will show you why in a couple of slides. So what did we build? Also, this is, Garrett was talking about this on Wednesday. At a certain point, you just need to get started. This is what we did. We had an opportunity, we just went for it. We didn't go all waterfall and think about what we want to achieve. We had to move, get started, do something. So this is what we built, and it's a pretty clunky thing. We build it up in pods because at the top end there's the ASA VPN constrainers, and that's scaled to 750 users each, which means 10,000 users. You do the math. We need a lot of these. We had Palo Alto firewalls in between, that separation for the various tenants. And then we had in the back end, we ran iOS, DMVPN to get all the users back to the offices. That was a critical piece because we were these were all manufacturing companies, so they were not consuming SaaS services. They were having physical hardware at their office locations, and they needed to be able to reach that from home. So there was a lot of traffic going back to the now empty offices. What was I? Yeah, okay. So we had we did it in pods. One such stack, one concentrator, one firewall, one router is a pod, and that was our unit of scale. So for each 750 users, add another one, and do this in 4 pops worldwide. If you're paying attention, we were building a SASE solution. This is exactly what a SASE solution does. But we didn't know it at the time. SASE the term was coined in 2019, the end of 2019. I didn't read any Gartner blogs, I still don't. So I didn't know we were building that. But basically, that's what we were doing. One more point to make. Sorry. Also, this is pretty much to reverse what Urs was doing on Wednesday. He was building something ugly that's still in production. We were building something very nice that was really, really short-lived, because it's nice that we're building a SASE solution, but we were a team of 3, or no way we're going to build a SASE solution. We'll get to that. Okay, prototyping. Getting there, that architecture or that design, we didn't get there in one go. Definitely not. We were messing with what version of image that we're going to need. We started with just grab the latest image from the AWS marketplace, and that was not a good decision. So we had to move a version back for several components, which also meant destroying everything and having to redeploy all the images. And then we started with pay-as-you-go licensing, pay per hour. Also not a good idea. At a certain point, we opened the cost explorer. We scared the hell out of us. And then we went with bring your own license, which is a lot cheaper in the long run. Which also meant tear everything down, redeploy. We were messing with how many interfaces we needed, because we were doing a multi-tenant network. We started with just one tenant, built it, it worked. Add a second tenant, didn't work, had to add additional interfaces, which meant tearing everything down, redeploying it with the new IP plan. Terraform makes this easy. Basically, what we did is in the morning, we deploy a couple of pods. Then we went in, we logged in, we tinkered with the config, we tinkered with the interfaces until we got something working, then coded it back into Terraform, and the next day destroy everything, redeploy latest version. For rapid prototyping, very, very, very much ideal. And also, it's our scaling. Running 4 pods in Frankfurt and running, 0 pods in Ashburn. Once we've got everything up and running, we can just increase this number, redeploy with Terraform, and now we've scaled. Nice. Networking in cloud. Who has done VPC networking in AWS? Yeah. Who liked it? Okay, so it's not a real networking. There's no broadcast, IP addressing. I'll get there. IP addressing is done by Amazon, so you cannot just turn up an interface, put an IP address on it, and expect it to work. Loopback interfaces are way out because AWS doesn't know about it, so they don't work. And transitive traffic, which was what we are doing, getting traffic in, and then moving it from box to box, and then getting it back out. That's very hard to do. And we ended up creating our own overlay. IPsec tunnels per tenant, which netted to about 10 tunnels per pod. So VPN tunnels. Who would like to do this by hand? Nobody? No, me neither. So that's what Ansible helps us. Gilijamse templating, we could template everything, code in our IP plan, formulas, and we're using Ansible to manage all the interface and tunnels. We were managing certificates on the ASA through Ansible. If you try that, try to avoid doing that. Also, when we're talking about automation, deploying all those pods and configs was not a fully automated zero-touch process. Most of the non-zero-touch things were around getting this right. It still required a lot of steps, manual intervention. But anyway, we've only got 2 weeks, so whatever. We didn't need to deploy a fully automated zero-touch auto-healing solution. We needed to deploy stuff now. So if there were still manual steps, fine. Also, software updates. We did software updates for the Cisco devices with Ansible. You saw Adam and Adrian's talk. They were doing this also with Ansible for the Palo Altos with a lot of steps. We were doing it with slightly less steps, but similar. The Palo Altos we were not doing with Ansible. We could have done that, but Panorama was easier because you can do zero-trust stuff, zero-touch provisioning stuff with Panorama. Last week I was speaking to people at Palo Alto and they said they actually have a zero-touch provisioning process that works now, which is nice. It sort of worked back then. And I did firewall software updates just from Panorama. Right-click, deploy, close your eyes. The reason we were getting away with it was because we had a whole bunch of pods which were each identical. So if it works on pod 1, it'll work on the other pods. The nice thing about scale. Then I would like to have a slightly short digression in ASA VPN load balancing. Why? Because this is the part where I had the most fun. So there are basically 3 options, all 3 labeled 1, but 1, 2, 3. So there's native Cisco ASA load balancing that totally doesn't work in the cloud. So that went out of the window immediately. So that's number 2. There's using a network load balancer, which is sort of works. But ASA does a DTLS thing where it starts with the TCP session and then moves to UDP, and then the load balancer gets lost. And that was, I think it can be fixed now, but we couldn't get it to work in half a day, so we moved to the next one. And that's DNS load balancing, and that does work, but it doesn't have any state, and it's very slow, and some clients really don't like it. So in the end, we had no working solutions for this. So my boss gave me a day to figure out, hey, that native load balancing, why doesn't it work, and can you get it to work? Just spend a day looking at it. We need something, so go. Days were very precious at the time. So how does it work? It's actually quite neat in a local area network. There are a couple of ASAs in the cluster, and the cluster master has the cluster IP. And the initial connection goes to the cluster IP, and the cluster master knows the load on each ASA and will redirect the client to the least loaded cluster member. Very nice. Now, if the cluster master fails, then all the cluster members will send out an ARP on who owns the cluster IP. If they get no response, the one with the lowest prio from ahead will send out the gratuitous ARP, claim the IP, will become the new cluster master, and everything will be happy. So how does this work in a VPC? In a VPC, ARP gets dropped, but ARP request gets answered by the mapping server. And the mapping server knows, because we told it, the VIP is living on that specific box. Now, when that box fails, the mapping server will still answer any ARP requests for that IP. So it's that box over there, even though it's dead, which means new connections aren't working unless we manage to, well, no, it can't work. However, I was also working with, for a different customer a bit earlier with FortiGates and checkpoints, and they kind of solved this problem. So I was looking into how they solved it, and they did by sending an API call. Because if one of the nodes discovers that the neighbor is down, it can send an API call to the mapping server, claim the IP address, and then it will start working. And I was thinking, well, API calls, I can do that. How hard can it be? It turned out not all that hard. So I built a little script that did some monitoring, and whenever one of the nodes, the master node was down, it'll run an API call to move the VIP over to the next one. And that worked. But I was running it on a management server, and the management server, well, suddenly has become an integral part of the solution, and that was not really good. So I went to my boss again, and I asked for, can I get a half a day, another day to figure out something smarter? And I got it. And he pointed me to Lambda. And Lambda is an AWS way to run code. I had a Python script, I can run Lambda. I didn't know anything about Lambda. I got 1 day to learn it. Turns out you can. You can learn Lambda in 1 day. When it's totally necessary. And this is where the duct tape comes in, because this is totally a duct tape solution. This is not a really sustainable long-term solution at all. But it worked, so we were happy. Now, we were getting CloudWatch, Lambda, so I could do all sorts of nice stuff now, because, well, this gives me, if I can run Lambda functions against CloudWatch, CloudWatch is the Amazon monitoring service, then I can send my alerts to Teams or ServiceNow, and I can use Lambda functions to get VPN sessions from my ASAs, because there was another problem that we had. We could monitor CPU loads on the ASAs, but we could not monitor how many sessions there are. We knew our scaling limit was 750 sessions per ASA, but there was no way from Amazon to see how many active VPN sessions you had. So I ran a bunch of Python to do REST API calls to the ASA, get that information, and then put it into CloudWatch. So now I can make a dashboard. And we were 3 weeks in now. We didn't make the two weeks deadline. 3 weeks in, we finally had something that worked good enough, and we flipped the DNS records, and we let communication department send a message to everybody. Okay, you can work from home now. And then watching the dashboard, seeing the numbers go up, that is such an incredibly good feeling. That was really cool. Thank you. How am I doing? So this worked perfectly fine for about half a year. And then it completely broke down because we had the VPN concentrator needs an emergency patch every now and then. And we did an emergency patch, and then it somehow broke something, and it started to degrade ugly, and then it completely broke. So we had to go back, refactor everything, build it again. And well, it turned out the pandemic didn't last for 3 months, but slightly longer. So we ended up, or they ended up, because I had moved on by then, with buying a real SASE solution, because that's, in the long term, probably the better way to go. So, I learned a lot. I learned, the first and foremost thing that I learned, I would not recommend this on anyone. Even ignoring the fact that we had a pandemic which ruined countless lives, which I would not like to repeat at any time, if possible. This totally burned me down. We were a team of 3 persons. We worked really, really hard for about a month, 2-3 weeks to build it, and then initial support. We had our operation guys in India. We were working in Europe. Most of our customers were on the west coast of the US. That meant we woke up, open the computer, see the messages from the guys in India, then work until way late when the west coast was online. Those were not 8-hour days, and it totally burned me out. And also, we built something, but the entire design process with all the steps and verification, that has some value. Going back through these designs, I've spotted at least 100 places where I would have improved it, where I could, knowing what I do now, or if I had more time, we didn't. So, yeah, don't do it this way. Or maybe, well, there is benefit of this, because yeah, I created a whole bunch of technical debt, like Dan was talking about. But Jeff was talking about management buy-in. When you've got a situation like this, you've got management buy-in. So I could do automation stuff. I didn't have to convince anyone that it was a smart idea. I had a problem. If I could fix it, go. So yeah, that was good, and I learned a lot. So that was also good. Which comes to the next point. If something like that happens, and I hope it will not be a new pandemic, but maybe you'll get an urgent, impossible challenge that you need to solve. Go for it. If there's hurt in the organization, if there's a pain point, and you can address it, you can get your management buy-in. And the next one, I was being a bit prepared for this. Not really prepared, but I knew a bit about automation. I knew a bit, we were looking into Terraform. I knew a bit about Ansible. I knew a bit Python. I didn't know Lambda. I didn't know nearly enough about AWS, but I knew a whole bunch of the basics, the primitives, as Dinesh would call it. Has called it. So it's worth investing your time in those primitives just to be prepared when the crisis comes, that you can at least start somewhere, regardless of whether it's a new and shiny tool like Lambda or SushiQ. If you have some grasp of the basics, you can build on this. We didn't have a tool to rule them all. I think, who was talking about that one? Mark Coleman was talking about that one. But we glued a bunch of tools together to get a solution. And finally, Stein's boss should have done this. It's the story on Wednesday. Yeah, where they were running the technical depth for way over its lifetime. You should not be afraid if you build something and it is tech debt and it's not supportable and it's a duct type thing, you should be able to kill it and replace it with something real. So the reason I pointed out the ASA load balancing thing, I was really, really, really proud I got it working. It was also really not a good solution. There was a lot of duct tape. So in one way, it hurt to just dump it, but it was good to do. So in summary, yeah, it was terrible automation. Terraform plus Ansible. Python duct tape, and it helped. It worked. It was Mercury level automation, and I learned from it enough to move to the Gemini stage. So that was my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing it. And and if there are any questions.
Fantastic presentation. Is this on? Thank you. This is a nerd question. You wound up having to support the ASAs because of the user clients and the premise that they not change?
Yes. Otherwise, we would have gone with the Palo Alto Global Protect, but that would have required rolling out a new client to all the laptops, writing a... In the end, it might have been a better choice.
With what you know now,
Yes.
would that have been a
Yes.
better solution, really?
Definitely.
Because we're always so reticent to change the client experience, and that was your going in premise, right? Don't change the client experience.
Yeah, we didn't have time to challenge it properly. We just had to go with what we had, and we were overwhelmed with the other challenges first. Once we got into the VPN stuff, we were already halfway in. If we had the time to think it through first, then we probably had recommended, well, why not eliminate complexity? We have the Palo Altos anyway, let's go with Global Protect.
Very nice talk.
Thanks.
I really liked the fact that you did two things that I think is not really talked about as much, because we always seem to want to be at some higher level plane. But in your particular talk, what you did were three things. You, as you said, don't waste a good crisis. And I think that's really important, because part of selling to management is you see a crisis, use that to actually sell automation. I think that's a great thing. The second thing that I really liked about the fact is you did what a lot of people look at sysadmins to do. You took a bunch of tools. You first changed the game. You said, not hardware, it's going to go to software if I have to scale. And you took a bunch of little things. You didn't sit down and spend time saying, what's the best way that I can go about it? You were ready to do a bunch of things to get the job done. And then when the time came, you were ready to kill your darlings, because you said, time's come to move on. I really think that those are, and you used the automation, learning Lambda, etc. You were prepared enough, as you put it, to kind of look at those things and know when to switch to each one. And I think those are all really valuable lessons that I don't think get spoken enough. So thank you for speaking that.
Thank you very much.